Welcome to the New Stewards podcast, where we speak to believers all around the world, find out what they are doing to combat the changing climate, and how their faith drives them in their work. My name is Ilyas, and I am on a mission to ensure Muslims become global leaders in addressing climate change. I believe we were put on this planet as stewards and trustees, or in Arabic, khalifas. In this podcast series, I hope to discover how we can be khalifas on earth, so we inspire and enable millions of Muslim sustainability leaders. Today, my guest is James H. Fagmous, a former CTO and current machine learning and AI expert. He taught AI and machine learning at the universities of Stanford, MIT, and currently teaches at the University of Southern California. For the past 3 years, he has been working as a spiritual success coach, helping Muslims be unapologetically Muslim and unconditionally successful in life, business, and love. During his career, James applied his AI knowledge on different climate and health related projects. Today, we discuss how James started working on climate change and what he teaches Muslims about success. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, James. It's an honor to have you here today.
Alaikum assalam. It's wonderful to be here. Peace and blessings, everyone.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair. How are you doing? What's the weather like for you over there?
I'm wonderful. The weather is uncharacteristically cold here in Los Angeles, and we had some snow, in fact, over the weekend. But that's for me. And speaking about sustainability, that's wonderful. We've had a drought for over a year, so this is we're starting to see some greenery out there on the mountains, etc. So it's been a blessing for sure.
A welcome change. Good. Do you have a nature habit in your daily life?
I mean, I walk daily in nature. That's something that I feel connected to. I love to just be in and around nature. And in fact, one thing that I do with Ramadan coming up, and this sort of, I felt a yearning for it, but you always have to give yourself permission sometimes to do things that you yearn for. And for the last 10 days of Ramadan, I'll usually go into spiritual isolation, or i'tikaf, as they call it in Arabic. And usually people do it at the mosques. But with COVID, the mosques were closed one year. And so I rented an RV in the mountains here in Topanga Canyon outside of LA, and like on Airbnb. And it was amazing, just by myself in the middle of nature, quite cold. Like I had mice in my RV and all that stuff. Very interesting. Nonetheless, while I was praying, there were things nibbling on me. But in general, it was quite transformational. And in fact, that's where I created one of our most popular courses called Limitless Love, which has helped many, many Muslims sort of tap into their spirituality. And it came into being while I was on this spiritual isolation period of 10 days.
MashaAllah. So is the RV on the program again this year,
Yes.
or are you going for something without rats?
Well, I like the location. That place is the location is just amazing. It's like in the middle in the middle of the canyon, and they have I don't know if they use this term, but glamping. They have other like nice tents, like safari style tents, but I prefer the RV. It's enclosed. There's a little fountain where you can make wudu. I mean, it was like almost designed for me. They're not Muslims or anything, but there's like a little running water with a fountain, open space for me to pray outdoors under the trees. SubhanAllah, it's just a beautiful experience. So that's my plan. I actually already booked the time off several months ago just to do that.
Wow, mashallah. Well, I hope it is as successful and fulfilling as it was last time.
Thank you.
Inshallah. James, how did you get started within climate change? I think it was at the beginning of your career, where you were working on different, both the AI and machine learning projects, and then you started on an ocean-related project. How did that happen?
The way it happened, so I started my career, before it was called AI, right? It was called pattern recognition, image recognition, all these different terms, right? Image processing, sorry. But it wasn't really, AI was kind of in the winter. It wasn't a popular term in computer science. And so my initial foray into this space was my grandmother from my mother's side passed away with Alzheimer's. And so I really wanted to work on AI, if you will, for analyzing fMRI data to identify the subtle differences between age-related dementia or memory loss and Alzheimer's disease-related memory loss. And they're confused, but they're not the same, right? And identifying that line between them is still an open question until this day, many years later. And so I started working on that, and data was an issue back then. I mean, you only had like 5 fMRI scans or whatever. Like, it's not like today. And so I didn't get very far, unfortunately. And then, there was, obviously, as many people my age, there was Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth. In 2007, I saw that. And, that's how I got into sustainability and climate change. And my first work was actually around using satellite imagery to monitor deforestation, especially in Amazonia, because you could do that very well. Back then, governments were, I think around 2010, then governments, especially in Norway and some other Scandinavian governments, started thinking about incentivizing conservation, right? I'm a wealthy country. I'm going to give a poorer country money to preserve their forests. But how do you know if they did that, right? So this tool, we actually presented it many years ago at COP. I don't know what year that was, but basically that was one of the technologies that we proposed. Well, here's how you monitor deforestation. And the idea is always the same, right? The idea is the opportunity there are really two main opportunities for AI, really, at a high level in climate change. One of them, or what I like to call global change, right? So the change not only of climate, but of eating patterns, of deforestation and ecosystems, urbanization, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like all of these interconnected changes that are co-occurring and causing each other. And one of them is really just, can I identify a pattern that even a human could identify with some level of accuracy? Can I just do it at scale now? Can I do it across the entire, like, you could show me one forest, that's great, but now I can do it all the time, everywhere, right? No matter how small it is or how big it is. So that's one, right? And we took a very unique approach, because most people would look at images, and images are noisy, they're missing, there are also technical difficulties with these things. But what we did, we looked at the greenery. We just looked at the green index, which is in one of the satellites. So it was more of a time series analysis problem than an image analysis problem back then.
So the ratio of green on the screen.
Yep. So the green pixel, the green intensity, there was NASA came up with a metric of how green a pixel is. It's not necessarily an RGB measure, but it's something similar to that. And basically, if it went down, what we were looking for is sudden drops. If there was a sudden drop, that meant it was either a forest fire or a massive deforestation. And forest fires are the biggest thing. If you look at Canada, for example, I mean, most of Canada is inhabited. And so forest fires go unreported all the time, right? And so, and as you probably know, forest fires are actually very dangerous, especially depending on what's burning, right? That when we have forest fires in Indonesia, where there's a lot of soy, a lot of stuff, that's like an ecological disaster in many ways. And so it's not only about the loss of the greenery, but it's also the other subsequent impacts that occur. So that's the one, is just, do you know a pattern? Are you clever enough to figure out a pattern in your data? And then can you just do it over and over continuously? And you could keep improving. So that's one. The other one is some sort of prediction, right? Like, can I predict an event using observational data? Because, right, we have the global and regional climate models. They work at various levels of accuracy, and they have their issues, of course, and that's why they do ensembles. So when people have the ICCP report, is across hundreds and hundreds of models. But the idea is, that's great. That's all based on physics, right? Can I look at the observations and see what I see as well and make predictions there? And there's a third one that I'll just add, is how do we help these physics-based models do better? There are gaps in the physics-based models. For example, they can't resolve hurricanes, right? No matter how long the model runs, it's a lot of times it's not going to create a hurricane in the simulation because it's just too complex. Can we help them make these models more accurate? So those are the three areas where AI comes into play, at least in my time, right? And so that's how I started. I got started on this, and then we received a $10 million grant from the National Science Foundation. We were the first ones to do this. Like, we were the first group to do AI and climate change. Like, now people talk about it, and I'll share with you why it doesn't work in maybe a little bit. All right. But we were the first ones to do it. We started then what's called the climate informatics community, which I think is still going till this day. There's a climate informatics workshop every year, and I think it went to Europe. It used to be at NCAR, the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. for many for like a decade maybe, and now they move in Paris and I think London or somewhere else. Then basically the key becomes, right, what do you do with this analytical insight, right? Like even if I have this technological tool that does XYZ, that's only maybe 5% of the solution, if not less. So that's, hopefully that was not a long-winded answer, but that's sort of how I got into it. And then as I progressed in my career, and as I saw sort of political will diminish, if you will, I started thinking about, well, how does global climate change and just the changing in the environment and the atmosphere affect health, right? Heat waves, for example, is a common one. Floods, of course, is another issue. Spring coming earlier than normal is a common concern, et cetera, et cetera. And basically we started combining now not just climate and satellite data, but now we brought in a third data set, which was health. And that's what I did when I joined Mount Sinai School of Medicine, Stanford School of Medicine. It was trying to combine, to try to understand these things at a system level. I think there were all these isolated sort of controlled analyses, and that's great. But as you know, this Earth system is completely interconnected. And if we don't make, and it's hard, and people will say it's hard, but like, that's not good enough. Like if we don't do the hard things, what's the point, right? So like we wanted to do our best attempt at a systems level approach.
Wow. SubhanAllah. And that's back in the day, because I think that's something that panels like the IPCC and like these climate models, something that's heavily relied on these days, right? To make predictions of what is the 1.5, 2, 3, 4 degrees Celsius scenario, and what are the trigger points within the environment. How has that knowledge being at the forefront of that movement, how has that shaped the rest of your career or life of that? Because
I mean, that's what actually got me to become a spiritual success coach, believe it or not. Although it took me many years to get there, maybe a decade, but that's what started it, right? What I came to understand is that in both climate change, climate change mitigation, resiliency, or in health, humans in general, not necessarily Muslims, all humans, and as a byproduct, all funding agencies and politicians prefer what I call a technological solution. What I mean by a technological solution is a vaccine, a pill, carbon capture technology, anything, a tool, a gizmo that allows me to keep doing what I'm doing, but getting different results. And there's no such thing. There's just no such thing. There is no way to address obesity. There's no way to address natural disasters. There's no way to address any of these issues with a technical solution. And I started working the immediate combination of climate change, or at least not climate change, the environmental conditions and health was with Zika. So I started that in healthcare post Ebola. So Ebola was taking place. So I wasn't really involved. But of course, we know the disaster that was, even though it didn't get the media attention, is because white people didn't die, to be honest. Like it was just Africans. So like they didn't care, right? Less of a problem.
In a political sense, yeah.
But then Zika came. And Zika was also lower media coverage because it was also poor Latin American countries predominantly that were facing them. Latin and South American countries and African. And so, but that Zika, as you probably know, is mostly transmitted via mosquitoes. And guess what helps mosquitoes is rainfall, water, all these things coming now together, right? And I wrote a letter and I was telling people, guys, Bill and Melinda Gates funded me to do this work on Zika. And I told them, look, this Zika is the least of your problems. What's going to be Zika 2.0 and 3.0 and 4.0? And now we call it COVID. But I told them that before. There is no technological solution to a public health problem. That's why public health exists and has been successful in many ways, right? And so the question becomes twofold. What does that mean for me, who invents tools, right? With AI, with computer science. But also, what can I do about it, right? Like, what is that going to be? And that's how I started shifting. I was like, well, the only way for us to be better is for us to change. There is no other way. There is no, like, all humans, we need to change. Our consumers need to change. Our eating habits need to change. Our materialism needs to change. All of it has to change. Not in a way that's like, okay, let's just torch everything and go live in the mountain. No, but that has to be some sort of clear change. That's why I became a coach. I was like, I cannot keep building these technical tools because there's not going to be adoption. There's not going to be impact. And it's just 1% maybe at best, if I'm really effective of the solution. Like, it has to be multi-stakeholder, multi-disciplinary solutions out there. And so I was like, well, at least I can focus what's in front of me is to inspire and help and hold people in a safe and accountable place to change. And of course, my focus is on Muslims and spirituality first and foremost. But it's the same thing for any change, right? Is that we really need to, like you mentioned it, you want to be a steward of this earth. And so first you have to be a steward of yourself before you can be a steward of this earth. And you can't do that if you're unhealthy, if you are relying on your job or money or possessions to fill a hole that's within you, right? You have to fill that hole first, and then so you can be a steward and take care of others and the earth.
Yeah. I'd like to challenge you perhaps a little bit. Why did it take you so long, for perhaps a couple of years, before you took this step towards becoming a spiritual success coach, after going through that phase perhaps of realizing back then that there was a fundamental problem in the way people in general look at life and see success? What was that change for you? Because I think that's very relevant for people within their jobs now, right?
Well, I had to,
Are you in?
I had to live that life first. I had to live that life first and see the transformation within me first, right? Like, I mean, there are people who I guess preach without practicing, but like, to me, it would not have occurred to me that I will be doing this. If you told me 5 years ago you'd be doing this, I'll laugh at you. Like, are you serious? Like, I was at the peak of my career. Like, there was no reason why I would do that. I was growing. I was a star already, very well known. Everybody funded my work. Like, it was like, there was no reason for me to change. And what happened was, when I became CTO of this health tech startup in New York City, New York was my dream city. I had gone to college there. I always wanted to come back and not be broke like I was when I was a student, right? I wanted to actually live the life that they show on TVs. We had a beautiful apartment on Central Park. I was married. I had 2 kids at the time. I was CTO, $30 million startup, working in health. I'm not trying to sell ads on the internet. So everything was on paper looking amazing.
Yeah.
But what happened, the dissonance started appearing between my outside appearance of success and my inside experience of success. Things started going poorly at my job. It seemed like it was very hoaxy and a lot of smoke and mirrors and all these things, and people being treated poorly at work. And basically, even though on the outside, people were like, wow, this is such a huge success. Inside, I was stressed, working all the time. I was ashamed because I was like, I'm a Muslim and like I see, I'm not doing anything bad, but I'm part of this, right? Like, I'm just associated in this thing that I don't feel good about anymore, right? Envy and jealousy, because I'd be like, well, my company is 30 million, but this person is 300 million. That person is 3 billion. Back then, billion was like a thing. It was like a huge, that's when they invented the term unicorn. And so
it was a lot back in the day.
Yes. Now, everybody throws that term around. So like, but basically, there was just this huge gap between what appeared on the surface and what I was experiencing. And I knew that something was wrong and I should do something, but I wasn't doing anything. And what occurred to me, like within like maybe my first conversation with this person when they recruited me, I knew something was off and I ignored it. And then, and you could say, well, that's just a first time conversation, give it a chance, right? But like, even then he was obvious to me, like, this is just nonsense. And then about 90 days in, I knew for sure, like, this is just completely like not what I wanted. But I stayed on for 2 years, right? And the epiphany that I had at that moment is that for 2 years, I had no faith. We talk about faith, Muslims, I believe, all the textbook things. Like, I could give you 25 hadiths right now. I could give you poems. I could give you ayahs. I could give you Quran ayahs, right? But are you actually applying them? And I was not, right? I could give you the answer. If you told me theoretical, like, brother, rely on Allah, pray more. I used to give khutbah all the time. I used to give halaq all the time. So I was very well versed in that world. Not to downplay it or anything, but I'm just saying from my own experience, right? And then it came to me, there was this verse that I read one time that says, "Oh, you who believe, why do you say that which you do not do? It is most hated upon Allah that you say that which you do not do." And I knew in that moment I had to make a choice. Right? I was like, if I keep going this way and I have this, like, and people were like, "Oh, you're so successful," but to me, it did not feel like it. Right? And that's what mattered to me. Is like I wanted to feel successful and feel connected. And in short, I was a CTO who happened to be Muslim. I was a CTO that happened to be Muslim, which means that I was not leveraging my faith in any advantageous way as it was supposed to be. And what I had to do is flip it around, be a Muslim who happens to be a CTO or a carpenter or whatever it is that I do after that. And so what it came down to, we were on a summer vacation with my wife in Kenya, and my mouth was dry, my hands were sweaty, my heart was thumping, like I was having a panic attack, I think. I don't know what it was. And I was like, what's going on with me? We were just sitting there waiting for Maghrib to pray, watching the sunset in the safari in Kenya. And then it just came out of me like involuntarily. I was like, honey, when we go back to New York, I'm quitting my job. And we had just signed a lease on a beautiful apartment in Manhattan. Of course, we need health insurance for our kids. My wife, we had just given birth to a baby girl. So, not a great time to be doing soul searching by any means, but it never is, right? That's the moral of the story, is that there's never going to be a perfect time to step into your destiny. And my wife, in that moment, she said, let's go. God will not forsake us. And I knew that was God giving me a sign, giving me courage through my wife. Very similar to Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he had to abandon his wife and Allah gave him courage through her. Or when he had to sacrifice his son, or he was commanded to sacrifice his son, he got courage through his son, saying, do what you were commanded. You will find me amongst the patients, right? And I went back and I quit my job. Literally, that very Monday, I quit my job. And it so happened to be the week of my birthday. It wasn't planned that way by any means, but I'm born in September and I was on summer vacation. So it is what it is. And then I started my spiritual journey. Now, how do I flip the script? How do I become Muslim first in a productive way? Not a Muslim, and I'm just a Muslim in the masjid, right? I wanted to be a Muslim in the boardroom, in the classroom, in the masjid, in the bathroom, in everywhere. Everywhere I went, I wanted to be a Muslim. Beyond, just saying the dua when you enter the house. Beyond, just saying Bismillah before starting. Those are good and powerful, but that's not the only way to show up as a Muslim, as a believer. And I spent about 7 or 8 months doing nothing, like just focusing, doing nothing professionally, that is. But we almost got evicted. We had no money to eat. We had no health insurance, of course. My wife had an infection that we had to take her to the hospital either way, etc. Right? But basically, as I kept taking these steps of faith, just like I took that step of faith of quitting my job, I got better at it. It became like any exercise. You get better at any muscle, right? And Allah.
So sorry, what did you get better at?
Just taking acts of faith. Just like in that time where I quit that job, it was very scary to quit that job. I mean, at the height of my earning potential, I probably walked away from 7 figures easily between my salary, bonuses, speaking engagements, book engagements, etc. Right? And just to walk on this path, and every day was difficult. Every day, like I didn't know if I was going to have enough money to buy food, etc. But then when I came out of that 8 months later, then it was like a quantum shift, right? Like I basically completely haphazardly started a consulting business, which I called wisdom.ai, because I felt that AI was just so much hype. And my first month, I made $50,000, 50. Just a few years ago when I was a student, I made $20,000 a year. The entire year when I got married to my wife, I was making $20,000 a year as a PhD student. Now I was making $50,000 doing exactly what I wanted. Not having to do extra work that's like nonsense. Oh, that's just the price to pay. And only working about 4 hours a day or less, probably. Like I'll go at 9 a.m. and leave at 1 because I'll drop off my kids at school and I have to be back at home at 1 to pick up my kids from school because I was at home for 8 months. So they needed me. And that's sort of how it started. Then I became a professor at Stanford, started advising a lot of venture capitalists. And then I started helping others. It wasn't until I went through this journey myself, because everybody has this, right? I'm in a bad job that I don't like, right? But brother, I have to be practical. That's the worst term that I've heard now, is like, I have to be practical. I cannot leave this job because I have to provide for my family. That's a common thing. And while there is some truth to it, it has become this catch-all, right? Like just a way to bail out from tending to your spiritual responsibilities in the world. And that's what I help Muslims do now, is basically, how do you become Muslim first and professional second, but not in a way where you jeopardize your career. That's why it's unapologetically Muslim, unconditionally successful. A lot of times people feel that, well, if I'm spiritual, I'm going to lose in the world. And if I'm in the world, I'm going to lose my spirituality. No, but there is a path in the middle that you could get both. And we need that. We need Muslim CEOs. We need Muslim VPs. We need Muslim presidents. We need Muslim chancellors. We need all these different things, because that's why we are so weak. Imagine, we just had the earthquake in Turkey. May Allah bless them. And in Syria. Imagine if Richard Branson was Muslim. And he said, I'm going to turn all Virgin flights, fill it with stuff, and send them all to Turkey. How powerful would that be? Imagine if Elon Musk was Muslim. Instead of sending a Tesla to space, right? Would he fire more than half of Twitter employees if he was Muslim? Probably not. If he again, not Muslim by name, but as in core, in practice, right?
In practicing
right? Maybe he would have made something even bigger contributions than he has so far, et cetera, right? We need, but what we've stuck with sadly now is like a lot of just Muslim middle managers. Like that's the farther we can go for one reason or another. Most of it self-sabotage, because we're too afraid of our own success. And that hurts us. That hurts us in so many ways. And it hurts the planet, of course, because if we are God's representatives on earth, if I was the representative of Apple computers, I came to you and I was all dirty and I did not know how to use an iPhone or, computer, like I was completely technologically illiterate, would I be a good representative of Apple? No.
You wouldn't.
I wouldn't. So now if I'm representing Allah, the most majestic, the most beautiful, the most wise, the most generous, and I am always broken, or bedridden, am I being a good representative of God? The answer is, of course, no. There is a beauty in a strong believer. Strong believer is better than the weak believer, and both within them there is good, right? But we lack, and we don't understand, like, it's been mutilated what it means to be a strong believer. Some people may, it's like, oh, you're just going to go butt heads with the non-believers and all this stuff, right? And so that's the work. That's the work that I try to do now.
Thank you for sharing your story, James. That's very inspirational. Could I ask you to spend some time reflecting, perhaps, on what it means for what it means for a Muslim to be successful as a Khalifa as well, right? Because it is, you cannot be perhaps successful Muslim practicing what Islam teaches you without also being a Khalifa, because that's one of the core principles of being a Muslim. It's why it's the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about us. It's that he was going to create a Khalifa on earth. It's one of our first commandments, perhaps, if you wanted to use that language.
Yeah.
Could you reflect and perhaps share some of your wisdom on that crossroads between success? Because and then I'm going to give the mic over to you, because there seems to be it seems to be hard in this time to be successful without having either a footprint or a negative impact that is way beyond the impact a single person could have, right? There is a unfortunate link between lifestyle and global impact, negative impact, perhaps.
Well, I love that you framed it in this way, in the sense, the first thing that we need to understand success is to take a step back and have the proper framing. So when you say, I am Allah's Khalifa on earth, that's a frame that most of us, when we wake up in the morning, we are not living our life. It's not a lens that we see our life and our world through. Right? And so The biggest source of suffering in the world, and Muslims specifically, because we get it double negative, is when there's a confusion, right? So what do we pursue? I pursue a title. Let me become VP. Let me become CEO. Let me become Chief Sustainability Officer, et cetera, et cetera. I pursue a degree, MBA, PhD, bachelor's, associate's degree, et cetera. I pursue a status, marriage, rich, poor, whatever, right? These statuses that we pursue. And Muslims, they'll take it to another level, right? If I told you, what does success mean to you? You will say, well, it's to go to Jannah. Ultimately, that's what you will say, right? Ultimately, any Muslim will say this is to go to Jannah. But actually, saying it in this way, my goal is to go to Jannah, is it seems holier than thou, but it's the same thing as saying, I want a Mercedes.
How come?
Because all of these are accomplishments. Even going to Jannah is an accomplishment. And if it can be taken away, it can be given to you, right? And you don't have control over it really at all. Like, it can come, go. But what makes this one worse, the Jannah one worse, especially for us, shooting ourselves in the foot, is that you never know until the game is over. A Mercedes, you can know. Like, I could keep going. Did I have a Mercedes today? No. Tomorrow. Did I go to Jannah? I don't know. So it makes it actually even worse. You know, when productivity people say SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, actionable, time-bound, etc., right? Well, Jannah is not time-bound, right? And so it makes it actually a bad goal in general, right? Because that is not, all of these are accomplishments. What you're really looking for is success. We confuse success with accomplishment. What is success? Success is not a thing. It's not something that you can hold. It's not a car. It's not a building. It's not a wife. It's not even all the way to Jannah, right? Success is a feeling, is a state. Hayya ala al-falah. Come to the state of success. Success is a feeling, is a state. It's a knowing. And really what success comes down to is very simple. Your success is your degree of your awareness of God. I know it sounds anticlimactic, like, oh, what, all of this for this? Yes, but if you were constantly aware of God in all your moments, you'll be the most successful person. Because even the Prophet ﷺ, despite his knowledge and awareness of God that dwarfs all of us, he, alayhi salam, would often say, Astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh, up to 100 times a day. Why? He was not sinning. He was not sinning. So there are two interpretations of this. One of it is that in that moment, he lost he put his attention on this world and lost his awareness of God. So he's returning. This is just what I call, in my coaching, we call this a pattern interrupt. This was just a pattern interrupt for him to return his awareness to what matters, which is God. And I'll explain that balance in a moment if that's confusing. Because like, well, if I just focus on God, what am I going to do in this world, right? Two, some people say that, some scholars say that it was, when it says astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh, is that he, in that moment, he had gained a deeper awareness of God and he's seeking forgiveness from Allah for when he had a lower awareness of him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, this is like next level, right? There's levels to this game. Alayhi salatu wasalam. And so, because without going into these details, what we all know is that the Prophet ﷺ did not sin 100 times a day, to say astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh in a sense of repentance from his sin, right? And so that's the win. Success is being aware of God and being free, because Islam came as a means to set you free, physically, mentally, spiritually, from the oppression of our minds, from the oppression of the idol, from the oppression of slavery itself, physical slavery, right? And is the freedom to be who God created you to be as his Khalifa. You are in the Netherlands right now, in this room, on this microphone, for a very specific reason, Ilyas. There's no coincidence. Why are you here? Why are you there? Like, it's not like most of us live our lives like it's just random chance. Why am I here? Why is this? Oh, if today is good, it'll be a good day. If today is bad, it's a bad day. Like, we're just victim of the day. When no, Allah puts us in every room, in every situation, in every conversation, all meticulously planned. And this is what I mean by we know all the answers. Yeah, but people are like, of course, brother, I know this. Allah plans everything. But are you acting like it? Are you aware of that knowledge to know that I am put in this room for a reason? I make this room better for a reason. Every room I walk in, I am making this room better because Allah sent me and put me here and trusted me with this room. Whether it's a meeting, whether it's an interview, whether it's a coffee shop, whether it's you by yourself. That's what success is to constantly and continuously be aware of God and gain the freedom to be who He created you to be.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, it's simple and yet very complex, right? Because people spend their entire lives. It's a life mission. You have never, like you said, you do not accomplish a high enough level of awareness of God.
That's the beauty of it. We could always rely more. We could always trust more. We could always love more. We could always connect more with Allah. That's the beauty of it, that every single day, instead of seeing it from a position of lack, we see it from a position of ascension and purification, and we can go deeper. But what I want to go back now to, well, if that is it, shall I throw away the Mercedes? Should I throw away the Ferrari? Should I throw it? No. What's going to happen is achievement, what Muslims have done, unfortunately for us, and this is my life, my very life. I'm not lecturing. This is my very life. I pursued achievements in the hope that it would make me successful. I pursued achievements. I got a PhD. I became a CTO. I did this. I started 4 companies, right? I did all of these in the hope that it will make me successful. When I had it all wrong. First, you become successful in the definition that I give you. And then as a natural byproduct of that success, accomplishments will come. Even despite you trying your best not to have them. Once a man turns away from this world, the world comes running after him. Once you are successful, the achievements, is it that particular achievement? Is it a McLaren? Is it a Mercedes? I don't know, right? But you will get the achievements because they'll just be a natural, sustainable byproduct of success. But what we try to do, we're just like, let me grab anything. Maybe this will make me successful. Maybe this course will make me successful. Maybe this money will make me successful. Just trying everything, flailing around, being unsustainable, right? Being consumeristic, hoping that maybe the next thing is going to make me happy, make me successful. The next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And like they say, only suckers put the hope in the future. Tomorrow I'll be happy. When I get married, I'll be happy. When I get a promotion, I'll be happy. When I get PhD, I'll be happy. When I publish that paper, I'll be happy. When I publish in Nature, I'll be happy. And you just keep pushing it and pushing it. And now you turn around, your whole life has wasted you chasing success through accomplishments when you could have just sat still and became successful. And then the accomplishments will come, despite your greatest attempt for them not to come.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're not saying is have this concept of perhaps of zuhd, where you let go of everything and you stop caring about the world.
No.
But it's about what you put first, or about what comes as a result of having your priorities straight.
Exactly.
Right? And then success follows. But if we keep chasing, if we chase perhaps the visible or the shiny achievements that make us feel good, or we think will make us feel good, you will keep chasing. And that is that is, if you link it back to sustainability, which it has all been, but that is how you greatly increase your footprint, your impact, and it's hard to come back from that, I guess.
It's a bottomless pit, right? Like you're just going to keep going lower and lower and lower. There's nowhere to go but down in that race. And so the main thing, if people are still listening this far, is just that in this very moment, even if your whole life you haven't felt successful, in this moment you can choose to be successful. Right now you can make that intention. Make that intention, be with God, because being with God is the success. Our awareness of God is our greatest success and our most underutilized asset. So when things got hard for me at my job, what did I do? I started doing tactics. I approached the VP of engineering at Slack. I was like, hey, can you mention me? Maybe this is an engineering management problem, right? And I started doing that. Then I started doing, The Secret and, Law of Attraction and all these other tactics out there. And then I started looking at, politicking. Maybe if I did some politics at work, things will improve, right? And the more I relied on tactics, the worse things got. right? Because I'm just ignoring the problem altogether. I'm just running around the periphery, right? But once I addressed the core, which was I just had no faith. I was not applying what I knew about Islam. And I'm not saying I was still, look, I prayed, I fasted, I did i'tikaf, I did Hajj, I did Umrah, I did all the textbook things. But that's why there are levels to this, right? Like I was like, but I was not internalizing it in many ways. For example, if there was a big decision, I never said, hey, hold off, let me go pray 2 rak'ahs in my office and I'll come back to you. That's a skill. The companion said that the Prophet ﷺ taught istikhara as much as he taught the Quran.
Yeah.
Right? And like now, it's like complete. Most Muslims that I coach, I don't know what the percentage is, but very, very high percentage, in the 80s or 90s%, right? Cannot make a decision. Just analysis paralysis. Wow. Either it's analysis paralysis or they make the obvious wrong decision because they talk themselves into the wrong decision. For example, let's use a very simple example around courtship, right? I'm trying to get married. This person comes. I feel something is off with this person. Oh, but they're the same sect as me, the same height, the height that I wanted, the skin color I wanted. They make this much money. They have a beautiful house. That thing I'll leave it to Allah. Ya Allah, take care of this thing. When Allah gave you the faculty to see the problem and to give you the agency to act on it, but now you're kicking it to the curb to Allah. That's basically just a cop-out, right? And then you go into marriage, and it doesn't work, right? And what we tell them, we have a book called Before I Do, 150 Questions Muslims Must Ask Before Marriage. And we said right then in the first page, I assume, what you ignore at the beginning is why you leave at the end. This is for any relationship. What you ignore at the beginning is why you leave at the end. What I ignored at the beginning when I was CTO, that first call, that feeling of this guy's just complete BS, I ignored it. And that's why I left at the end. Right? And so that's the key.
Yeah. So then how do you, because without saying it, you mentioned tawakkul. So how then does tawakkul work within the life of a successful Muslim, right? Because hadith I try to practice as much as I can is tie your camel, then have trust in then tawakkal ala Allah.
That's right.
How does that work within your daily context? Because I think that there are just so many doubts, right? I have a job, I have the bills to pay, sure, but I prepared so many years for this moment where I am right now. How do I know when I'm doing the right thing? How do I know when it's... So how do you... Because I guess you get that question a lot.
All the time. I mean, that's the work, right? I mean, first you already had the right frame, right? You already see, when you have these doubts, I could already tell you're not in the right frame, like the frame that you said before, that I'm a Khalifa of Allah. That frame has been lost. And that's what insan means in Arabic, right? What does insan mean in Arabic? Forgetful. The one who forgets often. We forget all the time. That's why reminders are encouraged, right? That's why the Quran is quote unquote repetitive, because we forget. We need to get hit by this information, not only from multiple angles, but over and over and over throughout our lifetime. So when you come in from my success is, we have our Muslims, again, we have the dissonance. On the one hand, oh, my success is only God. Everything, alhamdulillah, only happened because Allah willed, right? Beautiful. That's a beautiful statement to say with your tongue. But I can tell in your heart it has not penetrated your heart. Why? Because then you're running around like a hamster on a hamster wheel, trying to do everything. And this hadith, tie the camel and rely on Allah, is the most misunderstood hadith for Western Muslims. I can't speak for all Muslims, but I'm going to speak for Western American Muslims specifically, and European Muslims who I work with, right? Why is that? Because we have gone to an extreme. It says, well, it said, tie the camel. He just said, tie the camel, right? He just said it. The question was not, see, the question, you have to go to the question of the Bedouin or the man, the companion, right? The man said, should I rely on Allah? Shall I tie her? It was an either or question. And the Prophet said he should do both. So that's the first context that people have to understand. It was an either or question. He's saying it's neither this one nor that one. It's both together. But what we do, tawakkul, is an afterthought. For us, what we say is, how do I tie this camel? Do I put a camera on it to make sure nobody steals it? Shall I use a fancy knot? Shall I use a chain? Shall I have a fence around it? Right? And we start going into the analysis paralysis right here. I have a presentation. How are you tying your camel with your presentation, right? I have a pitch deck. How? Are you just tying your camel, or are you building a fence and trying to analyze every situation? And maybe it's going to rain, so maybe let me build a stable for this camel, etc. Right? We just go to such extremes. I know it's funny, but it's true. When you see that in day-to-day lives, even if you reflect right now in your own life, you will laugh of how over-prepared you are for most things to no benefit except the distraction. That's the shaitan distracting you from the goal. So that's one. A simple rule of thumb is this. He said to do both, right? Let's say I prepared for anything, to take a job, to write a program, to raise funds, to write a book. I prepared 10 hours. Let's say 10 hours, you feel good. I prepared 10 hours. I anticipated all the questions. Beautiful. Well, did you spend 10 hours relying on Allah as well? If you're spending 10 on this, you should spend 10 on that. There should be 50-50 because he said, and both. What we do, we spend 100 on this and inshallah, 1 second on that, right? Inshallah. Like after we exhausted, like I'll give you an example from studies, right? Most Muslims are high academics, like A's, 100%, whatever your grade system is. They'll be studying. And I used to do that. I'll study, and still not enough time. Maybe I didn't start or I procrastinated. What do I do at the end when I run out of time? And I studied and I'm burnt out. Inshallah, this doesn't come in the test. Ya Allah, inshallah. Now until the end, is that relying on Allah? Once I am now exhausted everything, now I turn back to Allah. It's not a co-creation. It's not the same mechanism.
Right? He was not involved in the
process. He was not involved in the process. It was an afterthought. And that's what I mean by we say with our tongue all the right answers. So I have a program specifically for Muslim professionals called the Spiritual MBA. We walk through these things, right? How to actually have hamd, not just say, how are you? Alhamdulillah. Immediately it comes up, but do you actually experience hamd every day, right? Do you know how to make decisions? Because people will tell me, brother, I prayed istikhara and the result came bad. Already I know then that you didn't do it. You already didn't do it right. If you came to me and said, but I did istikhara. That tells me that you don't know how to do istikhara, not from a technical perspective to pray and to make wudu and to make this dua and do this. No. See, istikhara is part of a system of Islamic. We have what we call the Islamic decision-making framework as one of the modules. And istikhara is one of the parts of it, meaning the prayer, the 2 rak'ahs and the dua, right? Or how to forgive. People say, I forgive you for the sake of Allah. Again, we've done a lot of showmanship in Islam now, right? But not a lot of actual genuine content. When we know the man who was promised Jannah by the Prophet ﷺ said, I forgave everyone once I went to bed. Right? I mean, very clear. Like if you truly want Jannah, that's your solution. How do you truly forgive yourself and others? So although it's a spiritual MBA, I don't teach you how to make a deck or how to make a P&L statement or how to write a reference, cover letter. But this has helped so many Muslims in their careers, in their businesses, more than any tactic would. And it comes down to this balance that is just completely flawed around over-reliance on our strength. And the process is completely void of consciousness of God. And I'll end with this, Ilyas. You said, I'm preparing and then doubt comes into my mind, right? The opposite of faith, of belief.
Well, I want to say non-belief, but I'm not sure.
Right.
I don't think that's...
Most people, that's what they say, right? They'll say the opposite of believer is a non-believer. Is non-believer. But is that linguistically and spiritually, is it true? Is the opposite of somebody who has faith non-belief? Sure.
Kafara means to
cover something. That's different.
Yeah.
That means you believe in something else. I believe just in something else. That is not the opposite. The opposite of faith is doubt. And so when you are in a state of doubt, are you in a state of faith? Probably not. And that's where, again, the continuous, when you are with God, you are in a state of faith. So you will not be in a state of doubt. And that's why I coach. Like the Prophet ﷺ was a coach, because on your own, you are going to spiral. You are going against so many things in your psyche, in your biology. But then, of course, in this nature of this world now, the world that is today is very different than the world when the Prophet ﷺ roamed the earth, right? And so we need to adapt to that. And I'm going to talk about that actually from my Ramadan health program, Why do a lot of, and it's the same thing with anything, right? Why are people not sustainable in their consumerism, in their eating habits, in their money spending, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Why? Right? We know the information. We know the knowledge. Again, the Prophet ﷺ gave the greatest nutritional advice in history, in absolute history. Third water, third food, third air. We all know it. Why can't we apply it? Right? The reason why we can't apply it is because we don't understand the match. We don't understand, right? Netherlands, Morocco. Is that the game that happened in the World Cup? Or no, I don't remember. No, it's Belgium, Morocco, right?
Belgium,
yeah,
Morocco.
Clear opponents, clear players, 11 versus 11. Right now, humans in general, we don't understand the match. We think it's 1 versus 1. We think it's me, capital M me versus small m me. Me versus my nafs. Me versus my ego, right? The reason why I eat too much is because I am undisciplined. My ego beats me. I am weak. But that is a mistake. Let me give you the 6 things that you're going against for any sustainability. Your nafs, your ego. Your ego wants more. Your ego wants more.
Yeah.
Your ego calls you to evil. We know those things. And that's a battle. That's a battle in of itself from now until we return, right? That's there. That's a given. But let's look at the 5 remaining ones. You have a biological battle, right? We have a desire to procreate. If you want to talk about, right? We have a desire to eat different foods. There's a reason why in our biology, we get bored from foods. It's a survival mechanism because if all I ate from this tree and this tree died, now I am going to die. So we were always seeking diversity, right? Diversity in partners, diversity in food, diversity in anything. Like it's just biological wiring in us. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going against it, right? So biological, mental, right? Oh, I need, like you said, the doubt. I need this to feel good. I need this. Oh, it's going to be hard. I cannot lose weight, right? Or, oh, you deserve it. Like for me, that's what it was, right? Oh, you worked so hard. You deserve cake. Why not? Be free, right? So the mind is telling you these narratives, right? So we said biological. We start with the nafs. Of course, the nafs we all know and accept it. We have the nafs, biological, right? Mental, and then we have social, right? There's just social, like, oh, why didn't you buy a car? Why didn't you buy a house? Oh, it's iftar. Look at the spread of all these foods, this buffet of foods, right? That is just there. You have the pressure. Or if you try to eat differently, whoa, why are you eating differently? Why are you not eating my food? I'm your mom. I'm your dad, right? So you have a social component to that is misaddressed. And then you have 2 that are very, very dangerous in this time and age. One is chemical. People have gotten, and these are abused. The last 2 that I'm going to mention now are abused by the industries around just consumerism, right?
Yeah.
If you are trying to buy something, there's dopamine, right? I play with the dopamine. I try to give you dopamine hits. I get you to use my app more. I get you to buy my phone more. I give you status, et cetera, et cetera. If you're in food, of course, you probably know this already. There's like literally billions of dollars spent. Food is only designed for taste, not nutrition anymore, right? So chemists, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of PhDs every day come to work. And how can I make this chip taste as addictive as possible? And of course, then you go buy more chips and that's unsustainable, right? And then you have 6, which is advertising. Right?
Also a big one.
Right? I mean, it's a big part. But basically, this is the playbook of the shaitan. What these industries have learned, just like the shaitan knew about us, what we didn't even know about ourselves. The shaitan doesn't have any power over us. All he does is suggests. But he knows us so well that when he suggests, he's playing to your weakness. He's playing to your desires, right? So he's just pointing you to that thing. And he's like, I just suggested and you fell for it, right? And these industries have taken the same playbook, including green industries, Tesla, Rivian, right? They try to play on that, right? Oh, it's a status symbol now, right? Feeling good. Yeah. Feeling righteous, feeling good. But an EV is as bad as a gas car if you're just buying it, right? And that's it. And you're charging it with coal, right? From coal-powered electric plants, right? It's not that much better. That's not going to solve our issues. So these are the 6 barriers to sustainability and health that Muslims face. And the reason why we lose the battle is because we think it's 1v1 when it's 6v1. And that's why coaching is so important. We could get us to become more, at least 2 versus 6. And then when you know that there are 6 people, like it's like those old karate movies. Now I could fight better. But if you turn off the light and I don't know how many people, like, what am I going to do? Right now we are in the dark.
It's difficult.
Any sustainable effort on the individual level, we are in the dark because we think it's just us versus our bad selves. When literally there are billions and billions and trillions of dollars being invested every single year to make you consume more food, more homes, more clothes. Of course, we didn't even touch on fast fashion, right? But and that's the realization that we need, and that's why coaching is so important for us.
Jazakallah khairan, James. This has been really wonderful, and I guess a spiritual transformation towards, focused on looking inwards. I think we do a lot of looking outwards. I know I do it within my work. A lot of looking at the externalities and how can we influence the economy and fix ecosystems, change behavior. But at the core, I really love how you brought it down to really being aware of Allah, truthfully aware. And it was confrontational to hear you speak about the difference perhaps between being a vocal or a theoretical Muslim and actually feeling your Islam and feeling what it means to be a Muslim. I'm very grateful for your time, for your knowledge. And I encourage people to take a look at your work. Where can people find more of your work?
My company is called Practical Muslim, again, to practice Islam in this way. And you could find me on LinkedIn. If you look at just James H. Fagmous on LinkedIn, if you just look me up, you'll find me there, and you can find more information about my coaching and all that stuff. As I mentioned, we have our book for those that are trying to get married. Before I do 150 questions Muslims must ask before marriage. And I'm coming out with a new book, inshallah, based on my spiritual MBA course. It's called Success with God, the 12 Spiritual Rules of Success.
When is that coming out?
I don't know. Probably somewhere in 2024, inshallah.
Inshallah. James, thank you very much. Jazakallah khairan. And I hope we can do this again sometime and dive deeper into some of the concepts we discussed.
Inshallah. Looking forward to it.
Inshallah.